Well, greetings. Welcome to another edition of the Has Been podcast. I'm your resident has been, and this is Thanksgiving week, recording on a Tuesday morning. Lots to look forward to. Not a whole lot to recap, other than I guess the men's basketball winning the tournament in the Bahamas in convincing fashion and beating the snot out of Texas Tech um, by 30 points. I think that shows you just at the level Purdue can be at when it's at its best. And throughout Big Ten season, they'll need to be at its best. And some non-conference games coming up, they'll be need to be at its best. But just an impressive performance against Texas Tech by um, a lot of people. Purdue showcased its depth, its talent, um, and kind of where it wants to go this year. I know it's November, and they've had success in November before, winning these uh, MTEs, which are multiple team events, and it's they parlayed that into success in the Big Ten, and um, a couple years ago going to the Final Four, and um, what you do in November can have an impact what you do in March and April, and Purdue hopes that's the case. Texas Tech is a really good team and will win a lot of games in the Big 12 and be one of those teams that's talked about to get to the Elite Eight and maybe the Final Four. But Purdue, clearly was the better team. Doesn't mean that it'll be a 30-point game if they play again in March or April. But Purdue did a lot of things right. They were in their first game against Memphis, probably wasn't as sharp as they wanted to be or what people wanted them to be. But then he came out and put on a clinic the next day. Um, and that's a positive sign for them. I thought the Texas Tech game would be one of those hurdles that they would have to overcome if they wanted to stay undefeated, if they wanted to win that championship. But now you start thinking, okay, when will this team lose? And it'll lose a game, probably a few games at some point uh, once you get into the Big Ten season. But as you start looking ahead a little bit, Friday they're going to play Eastern Illinois at home. That's a win. Then they're going to open up the Big Ten season at Rutgers, and I think everyone knows the issues they've had at Rutgers when they've been ranked number one. So, um, but it's a Big Ten game, and there's a different feel. There's a different energy. Purdue has not in these December Big Ten games on the road. They have not gotten off to a great start. Um, they've dropped some games in December. It doesn't hurt them in January and February, um, but just kind of be prepared for that because as the Big Ten is a different animal, um, and they have Rutgers on the road. And they're going to host Minnesota. In between that, they've got a really good Iowa State team coming to Mackey Arena the first weekend of December. I think that's a game that probably goes down to the wire based on the talent level at Iowa State and how they run their program and their type of team. Um, that's one to look at. They're going to host Marquette, even though Marquette is not really the Marquette that Purdue has been used to seeing over the last few years, but still, a Big East team that will come in the Mackey Arena, hungry to win. And then they have Auburn down in Indianapolis. Again, Auburn's not what it was the last couple of years. They've changed coaches, but still a challenge and an opponent that you have to take seriously. And it's a neutral court game, which is going to be like an NCAA tournament game. Purdue will have more fans there, which is commonplace in the NCAA tournament. So it's a good testing ground, proving ground for Purdue with their non-conference schedule, sprinkled in with some conference games in December. I think they can get to the end of the calendar year undefeated. Um, but then after that, you know, they're probably not. They got to go to Wisconsin in early January, and then you're running through the Big Ten season with tough environments, getting really good teams at home. Although I think Purdue, from a schedule standpoint, does have a little bit of advantage this year, where some of the, I guess, the marquee Big Ten games or the challengers to Purdue in the for the Big Ten title, they're going to be home games. They're going to be at Mackey Arena. That probably will give them an edge in winning the league crown. Off the top of my head, I think Illinois, Michigan play at Mackey Arena. Of course, IU does, but Purdue has to go to IU. And there's some other teams that you would consider challengers there that will come to Mackey Arena. But Purdue will have its share of tough road games in the league as well. So, um, but yeah, I think the championship in the Bahamas really um, gives them kind of a mark of you know how they can play against high level competition, and you're starting to see roles develop a little bit more, and um, things like that. One thing, Purdue has dealt with some foul trouble, but not major foul trouble. What if that happens, and what are the options there? And I still think this team will get better once you get the roles, a little bit more figured out off the bench, and guys like Omer Mayer, he's 6 games into his college career. He's already had a big impact. Jack Benner, 6 games into his college career, he's always had a big impact. Daniel Jacobson, played a game and a half last year. So he's 6, 7 games into his college career. So these guys are only going to get better. And, the big three are going to help him get better just by their presence on the floor. So, um, yeah, a lot of reason to be optimistic about where Purdue basketball is going to go. And in this week of Thanksgiving, you should be thankful that Matt Painter runs his program the way he does, and he still enjoys recruiting high school kids. And that's why you have Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Wren and Fletcher Lawyer on your team. And you should be thankful for that when you sit down and slice the turkey and pass the stuffing and eat the pie and all that kind of stuff. So it's lots to be thankful for from Purdue standpoint. Women's basketball, they bounced back from the Kentucky loss, beat Miami of Ohio 79-68. This is kind of the way it's going to be in the non-conference season. They created a schedule to try to get wins, and you know, they slipped up at Purdue Fort Wayne, uh, but they need to win the rest of these non-conference games, just to get wins and maybe gain some confidence a little bit. Now they'll have a Big Ten opener squeezed in there in the first week in December, where they go to Michigan, and that'll be a very difficult game for Purdue. Michigan, um, they were down 17 early to UConn, came back, never took the lead, but had a couple possessions late where they could have tied, but uh, didn't do it. But Michigan's playing, I think, like a top five team in the country, and they beat Notre Dame by 39 points a couple weeks ago. So they're legitimate. They're a top four team in the Big Ten. They'll be there with UCLA, Maryland. You have Michigan, and USC is still going to be there, even though don't have Juju. Um, but Purdue will have that game in there. But this on Wednesday they play Howard at home. It's a noon game. Howard has beaten Providence and George Washington this year. But I think a lot of these non-conference games are going to be like the one on Sunday, where it's not going to be a 40-point blowout, but Purdue's going to have to play well to beat these teams, just because of kind of where the program's at right now, and the whole goal is just getting wins. And these 2 games this week, they're host Howard on um, Wednesday, and they go to Central Michigan on Sunday. These 2 games replaced uh, the Cancun trip, where they whether they would have played TCU and North Carolina State, both of them in Cancun. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure they would have played one of them. And Purdue kind of opted out of that tournament, looking for to get two more, trying to get two more wins. And so that's what makes these two games coming up, because these two games replaced the ones in Cancun. That's what I mean. You got to win these games now. I mean, you had to win them before the year, but really you have to win them. You really have to win them now, and you have to go on the road Sunday at Central Michigan. Purdue's 0-2 on the road. Lost that 1 point game to Purdue Fort Wayne. Got blasted by Kentucky. Um, Purdue needs to go out and win a road game. I think that's imperative, and it'll be their last non-conference road game. But they need to stack some wins together, and they got a chance here to do that. But I don't think nothing's guaranteed with this team or program right now. First, they got to take care of business with Howard, and then go to Central Michigan and try to get a road win. Against a MAC team. They just beat a MAC team, um, and it'll be tough. It's on the road, and although there won't be 10,000 people there, it's just a different environment. Purdue they went from 20% shooting at Kentucky to over 50% against Miami of Ohio. A lot of that is just who they're playing. But the fact that they put the ball in the basket should be a step forward for them. And I think last time we visited, I think Madison Layden Zay needed to be a little bit more aggressive and, assert herself. And she did that against Miami, 21 points, which matched her career high. She had 6 threes. They need that out of her every night, to be honest, if they're going to have a chance to win games, but also to stay competitive in the Big Ten. They need her to be that type of player and that type of scorer for this team. They do have some other shooters. Although Ela Karsh, the freshman from Israel, didn't score against Miami of Ohio. She's obviously more than capable of doing it. Kiki Smith has shown flashes of bringing some offense. Um, Katie changed her starting lineup again against Miami of Ohio. Moved Kendall Poirier in, and Lana McCarthy came off the bench, and Lana had 12 points. She seemed to play better and had a different presence about her as opposed to Kentucky. And again, the Kentucky game, you're dealing with bigger, taller, better athletes than you did against Miami of Ohio. And but this is what you're going to get in the Big Ten. You're going to get more of Kentucky than you are going to get Miami of Ohio. And those are situations that you're going to have to deal with and play better. Maybe Lana is more comfortable now coming off the bench. Who knows? I think Katie's also still, we're only a handful of games into the season, still trying to tinker with the lineup, figure out what the rotations are, and see who fits where. Avery Gordon didn't play Sunday. I don't believe she was injured. It was more of a matchup thing because Miami of Ohio brings its post out on the perimeter, and that's a tough cover for Avery. So that's part of the reason why she didn't play uh, in that game. And obviously, Purdue could have used her size inside, but this is not Iowa 6-on-6 basketball from 50 years ago. So you got to play at both ends of the floor, and I think she would have been compromised somewhat defensively. But there'll be opportunities for her. I think Wednesday is an opportunity for her, and then Central Michigan will be an opportunity. There'll be opportunities for her, and you just don't want to put players in a bad situation where they're not going to. It was just a bad matchup for her. But there'll be good matchups throughout the course of the year that she'll be able to play. And Purdue got a few more contributions from some other players. Nia Smith. I mean, she played 6 minutes but scored 9 points. That's hard to do, but she did it. That's pretty efficient as well. And Sage Stahl, rebounded well. So there are a lot of good things that they did. And kind of get the bad taste that Kentucky lost out of their system. But now they need to string some wins together, and um, that will help from a confidence standpoint. And uh, defensively, curious, how they handle things moving forward. They play some zone at Kentucky. I think you probably see more of that, just trying to keep the ball out of the paint. Um, there are downsides to playing the zone, and do you rebound as well, and some other factors there. So big two games coming up for the women's team is they look to again get some wins to put some wins together to get some momentum and put themselves in a position once the conference season heats up again at the end of December to maybe begin that climb out of the basement of the Big Ten. Football is going to play IU on Friday night. Um, it's a night game. You remember when the Big Ten wouldn't play any night games in November for football? Wasn't that long ago. Now there's one Friday night, there's one Saturday night. Um, how many were there last week? I mean, we've gone from 0 to 60 in a hurry on these, all because TV. That's what TV wants. That's what TV wants. TV gets, and uh, and that's I just kind of find that striking that we've given everything. I mean, not that it's a surprise, but we've just given everything to TV, and they get to do what they want, and the regardless of the inconvenience of it for fans or whatever. And um, but Friday there'll probably still be a lot of red in Ross-Ade Stadium. I don't, Purdue fans will show up, but if the Ohio State game, plenty of Ohio State fans got in. I would anticipate a lot of Indiana fans getting into the game, and I mean, a lot riding on the line for Indiana. I mean, they're still trying to clinch a spot in the Big Ten championship game, trying to keep their position in the college football playoff. So this is a extremely important game. I mean, they've reached the point in their season where um, they can afford a loss, but if they want to get to where they want to go and get in the best position possible, they really can. So I mean, they need to beat Indiana, then they're going to play Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. I don't know if they can knock them off or not because Ohio State's such a great defensive team. It'd be a fascinating matchup, fascinating game to watch. But I think Indiana's secure in the college football playoff. Doesn't matter where they're going to be. You want that bye, obviously, to have a better path to advance. Um, so they'll take the game seriously. And I think last year, I mean, it was what 66-0 last year. Um, and not that the Kurt Signetti won't add some points here and there, but listening to him talk this week and how he's talked about Purdue recently, he seems to have a different level of respect for Barry Odom um, than maybe Ryan Walters. Um, it doesn't mean his team won't score 70 points. It doesn't mean anything like that. I just think he has a different level of respect um, for what Barry's trying to do here. And Barry's done it before. And, Signetti's done it before. So, and who knows where their paths may have crossed uh, throughout their careers. But it seems the tone seems to be a little different uh, with this year with Signetti as opposed to last year. And really, Purdue was helpless last year to stop them. I mean, they couldn't. I mean, they just could not stop them last year, and it showed on the scoreboard. And I'm not sure this defense can stop IU this year. I mean, because it's shown some holes, especially in the secondary. But when you just look at the scores, the Michigan game at the beginning of the month was tighter than maybe a lot of people thought. The Ohio State game score was tighter, even though there's Ohio State left two touchdowns on the field that day. Their first play from scrimmage was a touchdown. They got called back because of a penalty, and then they were going in the third quarter to score, and they threw an interception. So they easily could have had 14 more points in that game. From a score standpoint, looks a little bit different. The Washington game, wasn't a good game for Purdue. Not that they got pounded pretty good, but just the lack of discipline and self-control. I guess that's the thing that I look for in this game for Purdue is um, did they clean up those problems? And talking about the whole team, you're just talking about a couple players that um, didn't take care of their business very well. And so, do those things are those things not an issue on Saturday? And I think I talked about it before. The whole rivalry thing. It's a big deal to fans. I mean, the Purdue IU game is a big deal. Coaches talk it up. You know, Barry Owens reading from a sheet on Monday about the series and all that. I mean, he knows about it, but he doesn't really know about it, if you understand what I'm saying. And he knows it's important. He knows that this is a game that the fans care about, that people around the university care about. But not live the history of it, you don't really know it. And the same way with Signetti, he knows it. He sees the numbers, he sees who's done what, when, all that kind of stuff. But until you live it for a few years, you don't truly know. And I think in this era of the transfer portal, Ohio State and Michigan is always going to be Ohio State, Michigan, I think. And there's some other games across the country on an annual basis that won't that shouldn't change. But with so many new players coming into programs, um, do these rivalries still have the same intensity that they used to have? And I would say no. Because I mean, you had 54 new players, 54 newcomers from a transfer standpoint in the Purdue's program, 82 newcomers. So 75% of your roster wasn't here last year, and 75% of your roster is really not educated on the Purdue Indiana rivalry, before they got here. I'm sure they've picked up things and stuff, but how important are rivalries to transfers, especially 1 year transfers? When you have players that have been in your program for 4 or 5 years, they get it, they see it, they hear about it, they understand why it's important. But now, when you come in for 1 year, whether you're done with your eligibility or this is a stopping point to somewhere else. I mean, how important is a rivalry to you? I would guess not that important. Did these transfers come here to play in the Purdue Indiana rivalry game? I would say most of them no. I mean, you would go to Ohio State to get a taste of the Ohio State Michigan rivalry, I would think, or you would go to um, Alabama to get a taste of the Alabama Auburn rivalry. And there's a lot of rivalries out there, but I think, and some of those rivalries stay intact, I think, from a intensity standpoint, because the fans make sure it stays intact. But I just don't, and not that these rivalries are going away, but I just think the intensity of them and the focal point of them is lost its luster a little bit. Same with Senior Day. Um, Purdue's going to have Senior Day on Friday. I mean, basically, you're honoring, several, not all of them, but several 1 year mercenaries coming into the program. And I mean, how do you respond to that if you're a fan? In Purdue's year, it's not a good thing. Now, IU Senior Day was probably more of a celebration because of what those players had done to turn the program around and put them in the position that they're at. But at Purdue, I mean, at Senior Day, I think is losing a lot of luster too because you don't have players that have been here 4 or 5 years. For a lot of cases, you got players here 1 year, and I mean, as fans, how do you respond to that? I mean, you clap and acknowledge their presence, but beyond that, I mean, a guy like Devin Mockabee, who's been here all his whole career, yes, he deserves his moment. He's earned his spot to get those cheers, even though he's not playing anymore. But any player that sticks with a program 4 or 5 years, yes, on senior day, it's a huge deal. It's a big deal because this is you saw your journey all the way through. But for these 1 year players, I just and they'd never give you an honest answer about what they're thinking and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they won't do that. But you just from an outsider, you just have to look and say, what are we celebrating here? What are we honoring here? You come here 1 year and we give your parents some flowers and we pat you on the back and say thank you. And but I think senior day has changed now, not just in football, but I think in a lot of sports, senior day is going to change. Now, basketball, the impact is a little bit different, um, but it just those are two things that I think college football um, is going to have to deal with. Now, if the fans can feed the rivalries, like the Purdue Indiana basketball rivalry is always going to be there because the fans won't let it go away, and they're gonna feel that. But even if once you get the basketball scene, you talk to a guy like Oscar Clough, who has played at 4 different schools, 3 or 4 different schools, and um, how does he? I mean, he'll get into the Purdue Indiana rivalry because the fans will be into it, and his teammates, those from Indiana especially, will be into it. But you know, how big of a deal is it to these transfers that Purdue Indiana? It's just not Purdue Indiana, but if Oscar Clough would have went to Illinois, what's the Purdue North or Illinois Northwestern rivalry? Or if he went to Iowa, the Iowa Nebraska, or Iowa Minnesota, or Iowa Wisconsin. I mean, it's not isolated to Purdue Indiana. It's just the rivalries in general. How much do these transfers really get into it? Um, or to them, is it just another game that they're playing and trying to get to where they go? You, they're going to give you the word salad. They're going to give you the lip service of it does mean a lot and all that, but deep down, does it? Because you didn't grow up around it. The Trey Kaufman-Renn, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, not all the way Fletcher Lawyer because he came from Michigan, but his family history tells you he understands it, knows it. But for Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, they've grown up around the Purdue Indiana rivalry and they understand what it's all about. Um, Devin Mockabee, who suffered an injury and isn't going to play Friday, but he understands kind of what this is all about. And I'm sure there's some players on Indiana's team that are in-state guys that understand the bucket. But I just get a sense for the most part that again, rivalries are not going away. But the I think they become, I don't want to say less important because they're always going to be important, but just the uh, the significance of them, I think, is going to get lost over time. It'll never completely go away, but I just think the intensity and all that on a year to year basis kind of dwindles a little bit because you just have so many new players coming in that don't have a history with it. And things you have a more history that you understand, you know it's important. And but that's where your guys that have been in the program 4 or 5 years have to convey that, have to um, bring that out of the newcomers and emphasize how important this game is to the program, to the school, to the fans. That and that you have to give your best there. But I don't know. Those are a couple hot take thoughts that I was thinking about that came out. And but as far as the game itself, I mean, I expect Indiana to win um, relatively easy. I don't think 66-0 is realistic this year. I think it'll be convincing enough without being embarrassing. How about that? I mean, I think again, IU has has a lot to play for. Purdue does not. But the bigger question for Purdue football is like, what's next? how many players are leaving, how many players are coming in, and um, how do you get this thing turned around? They're gonna enter the 2026 season with some losing streaks. At least, the Big Ten ones will be difficult to take care of, depending on the sequence of games. I mean, they're going to end this year on a 10-game losing streak, but that'll get snapped when they play Indiana State in the first game in 2026. But that non-conference schedule has Wake Forest and Notre Dame on it. Notre Dame obviously is not a pushover, and Wake Forest is not a pushover either. So Purdue faces more challenges next year. Um, but Barry Odom, this is why he's here. He's got to push this program forward in some way. And how they handle their business in the portal this year is going to be key, because they need an upgrade in talent across the board. I would anticipate some changes on the coaching staff um, this year. Uh, so this offseason, how many, you know, I don't know for sure, but there'll be some. There's always changes. And I'm not just saying because there's changes. I think there will be changes on the staff, um, in how this staff looks for the next season. But the key is going to be getting better talent in here and meshing it all together and making it work. I mean, Indiana's kind of giving you a blueprint to follow. It's one thing to follow it, but you really got to, I mean, you have to know the inner workings of what they're doing and how they're doing it. Just to say, well, Indiana's doing it, so Purdue can do it. No, it doesn't work that way. But there's some things there that they can follow. And, right now, Indiana's program is kind of a shadow over Purdue because of the tremendous success that they've had and the lack of success, at Purdue. So that's kind of something that Purdue has to deal with. All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving. Call the Butterball Turkey Hotline if you got questions about your turkey and everything else. I'm sure they're standing by waiting for your call. Um, and if all else fails, pizza's available. All right. You can eat pizza on Thanksgiving if you need to. All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, and we'll do this again after the break. Thanks for stopping by, and again, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, and enjoy the weekend.